Okay. Cool. I think we are live. Hopefully you guys can hear me just fine. All right. Okay, 6 p.m. Awesome. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another Tuesday live stream. This is Amy Williams with Skellig, with my witch's hat, because it's October, Halloween's coming up. That's exciting. So, welcome. This is actually going to be our first episode following this new format. So, this week, instead of doing live development, instead, we're going to do more of just talking about the software that we configured earlier in the week, and we should be releasing some of those clips. I think some are already out, but you'll see more clips being released later too of everything that gets shown tonight. So don't worry if it seems like we go kind of fast. The details will be available later. So people are probably wondering, all right, why are you doing an episode just about HighByte? So you know what's funny is I actually wanted to talk about HighByte for a while. I don't know if you guys remember, but I initially was trying to release like a second mini-series. It was supposed to be 5 parts, and it was from like Legacy Life Sciences to 4.0. And we did release parts 1 through 3. So a quick recap. In that series, I was trying to make the case that everybody can and should benefit from Industry 4. And the first thing that you need to do is that assessment and then proof of concept. Now, people like to skip the assessment. I can't tell you how many project bids I've seen that looks like they just said, what do we do for the past decade? Okay, do that again. And I can't really blame them. People like to stick to what they know, but digital transformation is about innovation. So by I think my mic is back. Let's see really quick. Hello? Testing? Let me check. So I've learned, one quick audio mixer. Hello? Okay, good. All right. The joys of live and the joys of my laptop. I think it's haunted. So anyway, as I was saying, in that video series, we kind of made the case that you shouldn't skip the assessment, even though it's comforting to do what you've always done. And it's hard. It is kind of difficult to do something different, right? But in order to do something different, you should at least spend time doing research, or if you don't have time, then you should probably get some help and rely on somebody else's expertise, like you can take classes or hire a consultant to kind of help accelerate your learning, right? Now, my plan was episodes 4 and 5. Those were going to be a bit more technical, and I was going to show a simple, like 10-minute use case targeting a specific software that I know is popular in the life sciences. Because my hope was if you guys saw that and redid it yourself at home with your real manufacturing data, you could take that like teaspoon of political will, go to your manager and say, hey, look at this open architecture. Look at how great it is to have access to data. You should give some time or invest some budget into letting us properly pursue like Industry 4, right? But I was naive. Actually, better yet, I probably should say honestly, I was spoiled. I was spoiled from working with, softwares like Ignition and HighByte and Hive and Canary. All those guys who actually like when you make videos about their product that I forgot. Some companies actually don't appreciate crowdfunding development, I should say. So unfortunately, it turns out that that initial plan kind of got a thumbs down from the legal department because it would have been showing a lot of like proprietary software that they, I guess, don't want advertised. So that kind of killed the series for me because I never wanted to make a video where I say, hey, take my word for it, this thing is gonna work. No, I want to be able to prove and I want to be able to show the behind the scenes that, hey, this actually does work. This is real data. So that is why episodes 4 and 5 never happened. But I have good news. Tonight, we are going to resurrect videos 4, the spirit of video 4, by talking about data ops, HighByte, and some of its version 4 features. So let's start off really quick talking about data ops. So I think if we go and just Google it, we get this definition. It's actually from Litmus, which is another cool company. And they say that data ops, industrial data ops, is the latest framework in Industry 4. It drives digital transformation, and it deals with collecting, normalizing, and contextualizing data from all assets, ensuring it's usable for operations, IT, data science team, and executives. So that's a really cool definition. This is actually probably one of my more favorite definitions because it does include those key words of how important it is to contextualize and normalize data. But the good news is there are a lot of data ops platforms out there. Like I think you could consider Litmus as one of them, and they're cool too, right? And it can be a bit overwhelming. So when I think about, okay, data ops platform, there are really two minimum functions that I'm thinking that this thing has to nail before I even consider going forward with it. And that is data modeling and data movement. So data modeling, that's basically when you can create a structure of data, and we'll show this later with HighByte, but it's similar to like a UDT and Ignition, where you can create, where you can take different data sources, organize it in an intuitive way, and then for my use case, I like to publish that then into my unified namespace. So that's data modeling. And then there is data movement, which means, can I take data from source A and get it to source B? Pretty simple. So I pick those two when I think about data ops platforms, just because when we think about the unified namespace, you have to do those two things to actually construct one. Because, at existing sites, unfortunately, nobody has access to data, so data movement is really important. And then second, it's not clean, it's messy, there's no data governance usually across the whole enterprise, so that's another big lift that your data ops platform should help you solve. So to show that today, we are going to use HighByte. Now, I'm certain somebody's wondering, well gosh, why HighByte and not Node-RED or platform A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? Are you saying that, gosh, Amy, you have to use HighByte? And I want to be crystal clear on this. No, you do not need to use HighByte to build a UNS to be a successful company. Just like you don't need to use Ignition, you don't need to use MQTT. The beautiful thing about building a unified namespace architecture, it's open, edge-driven, lightweight, report by exception, is that there is no one right way or wrong way to do it. But what HighByte has going for it is this beautiful little bar at the top of that 2-hour unlimited time trial. It's just like Ignition. You could build a fully functional enterprise class solution without paying for anything until you want it up 24 hours running, right? Now, I want to give one honorable mention. The other big still hear me. It's so funny, this microphone. Okay. All right, I think you guys can hear me again. The other big contender for a totally free data ops platform would be Node-RED. That's also a really good tool, and I do recommend a lot of people check that out. One word of warning though, it is free and it is open, so everything is not guaranteed to exactly work perfectly. There are some nodes that don't like having over 10 connections, for example, or they might be deprecated. So just be a little cautious with Node-RED. It's powerful, it's wonderful, but it doesn't have the type of support with it that I think a paid platform like HighByte does. All right, so with that said, let's go check out HighByte. The first thing that I want to do is kind of just do a quick tour of the platform. All right, so if we come in, I'm assuming that for today, we're just going to cover the basics of HighByte. There's a lot that HighByte can do. If I went around and tried to address every single use case, we'd be here all night. So I'm intentionally just going to hit on a few of the core components. And then if people are like, oh, I wish you talked more about that, please leave a comment. You can fill out the form. I'll gladly make more videos if that's what people want. All right, so in our tour, the first thing to note is that up here in the upper left, well, first there's this beautiful banner for the trial. So I'm going to hit reset trial. It's that easy. I love it. So the first thing is connections. So what this is that first requirement that I care a lot about, right? Like, what data can you connect to? And then second, can we help move it around? So let's make a new connection really quick, just to show you how that is. So we can do new connection. Next. Now let's look through what the connections are. The first one is AWS, so that's like cloud. Azure, that's more cloud. It does do files, CSV, Parquet. Then there's Google, more cloud. HTTP, okay. Modbus TCP, that one's fun. Then there's MQTT, both flavors, OPC UA, more Snowflake, cloud. You got Kafka, the new Ignition module, and then some of your Microsoft SQL servers, all that. Okay. Now, you know what I love about all these connections here? I do not see that many things for like weird plant floor protocols. And you know why that is? Because HighByte realizes it lives in a world with Kepware, and it's not trying to compete with it. It understands that honestly, most of us out there, we already have Kepware, we're already using its drivers. That's great. Leave that there. But then what you can do with HighByte is say, okay, we're just going to use this nifty little OPC UA connector right here, and then we can connect to your Kepware, take that data, model it, or stream it wherever you want, throw it into MQTT broker, Sparkplug, Flat, whichever, you know? And that's something that I really appreciate about HighByte, is that you'll notice some of the features it does, they're very, I would say, targeted, which is great. I don't see them just throwing stuff on there just to be competitors with other things in the market. Rather, it seems like the platform is trying to find what are the gaps and try to address those needs. I do appreciate that. Okay, so the next thing is you connect your data. Great, but this is like plant floor data. It's messy, it's confusing, we don't like it. So how can we fix that before we send it somewhere? Well, then you can come over to this little tab here that is called models. Now, I like models. It is a very, very simple thing. So we can click on this guy, for example. All you do at models is just list out the attributes that you want. So for example, I thought, well, based on my FermentBot simulator that I was using earlier, these are the attributes that I want, and I just list them out. I don't worry about, okay, where's the data sources? We're just focusing purely on the model. And then when you want to instantiate it, you can just click the little button, create instance. And once you get to the instance, this is now the part where you actually worry about mapping on to all your inputs. So what's cool is you can use, just like with Ignition basically, or most other sources, just like with a lot of platforms, you can combine a lot of different inputs into your model. All right. So we can click on one, we can look at this guy if we want. So one of them, for example, was that FermentBot simulator I made where we have a little OPC server. And you can see that all I did was I went over to my inputs, I went to my OPC server, and then I was able to just drag and drop my tags as needed onto this little model. And then something that I really like is you can come over here and click the test instance button, and it just shows you, oh, this is what it looks like when it all comes together. So that's really convenient. All right. So then the next thing is, okay, we've connected to data sources, we've created a model, now I want to send it somewhere. So the way you do that is in this section called pipelines. So what we're going to do is we can look at this one for fun, I guess. So pipelines, honestly, they kind of look like Node-RED in a way. The most common thing to do is you start with just a trigger, and then you can always read from a data source, write to a data source. And what's nice, though, is pipelines, they've combined with flows for version 4. They actually add more functionality. You can actually do a bit of manipulation in these pipelines, and we're going to show some of those use cases in a little bit. But these are really powerful, and these are how you get data from all your different connections to go from point A to point B. So that's really nice. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to go to is the settings area. So something that I really like about HighByte is you can very easily, just a click of a button, import and export projects. Now, the other thing that I actually like too is some of their licensing lets you, some of their licensing models let you have more than one HighByte instance at a site. So that gets really powerful. Because you can imagine, okay, how do I do data governance across all of these different sites, right? Actually, yeah, one sec. So with the import and export, that's really helpful for data governance because you can imagine, gosh, how can I create my models to be consistent across all of these different sites? Am I just going to have meetings every day? Am I just going to do this through like sheer force of will? No, that's not really going to work. But what's nice is because models and instances are different, you could go to your models and say, okay, guys, listen, we have decided that this right here, this is a bioreactor simulator. We're going to export this, send this out to all these different sites, and we'll say, okay, confined to this model, and then at every site, you can worry about, okay, how do I make all of my instances map onto that, you know? So that's a pretty easy way to deal with that data governance. The other cool thing too is in users and roles, you actually can come in here and configure what people can do. So let me click edit really quick. Or no, let me go to default, maybe. There we go, okay. We will not mess with the admin. But what's really neat is in these roles, you can be specific about what resources they have access to. You can also say, hey, maybe you can only read data, or you can write, or maybe you can do everything but you can't delete. And if you want, there's also this tag functionality, which limits the resource to only those that have the specific tags. So you'll see that like throughout the other areas, they have the tag input that you could set if you would like to add further restriction on what people can do. That's also super powerful. And then the last thing that I want to point out on the quick tour is if we come down here, they have an MQTT broker. Now, I love this because if you just enable this, what happens is within HighByte, it comes on port 1885, its own internal broker. So you don't have to go ahead and like download Mosquito or download HiveMQ. If you just want to get started, you can use this broker just for some internal testing. Now, keep in mind, this isn't like a clustering, horizontally scaling, fancy schmancy broker. I wouldn't consider this an enterprise broker. But for development, it's really convenient that right out of the box, you can just hop on over to this UNS client, connect to the HighByte broker, and then start seeing all of your data right away. That's super duper helpful, especially when you're messing with pipelines and trying to format things to just jump down to this tab and see, oh, okay, yeah, I can tell what it's doing. That's awesome. All right. All right, so that was the quick tour. Now, the first thing that we're going to do now is just go through like maybe 3 or 4 examples that I have set up with HighByte. So the first one that we're going to talk about is per version 4, the new input connection called the ignition module. Now, it used to be that when we wanted to connect to ignition, how do we do it? We'd probably use like the OPC UA server, or we would use Sparkplug. Most likely Sparkplug. Now, the downside of Sparkplug, of course, is you have to deal with the protobufs and, you know, that formatting where it's under like that DData message. What's great is with the ignition module, you just get to see the entire UDT structure. And when you want to configure your inputs, once we go over here, you can just type in the exact tag address. Like, it's extremely intuitive. You don't necessarily need to now worry about using the transmission module and thinking about all of that. Now, I think my trial just expired, so let me get that back up. Yay, okay. And I'll just show you really quick. When you install HighByte, you have to install it actually in the Ignition Gateway. It's just a module, and then you go down to the settings, and then over here you configure the port and the password, and then you just link that up in HighByte, and you're good to go. So now that that's reset, hopefully we can actually see our UDT. Yes, we can. Hooray. So by the way, I probably should have mentioned this. What we have in our Ignition project is if I go to Exchange, we just created a very simple little bioreactor UDT definition following the ISA 95 Part 2 object model, which was created by Dylan Dufresne. So I highly recommend you guys check that out. It's a really cool resource. I really like the UDTs. It was super easy for me to expand upon it. It was really fun. So that was great. Now, something that's interesting is I feel like people might wonder, well, gosh, why would they do that? Why would they have Ignition and HighByte? Aren't they competitors? I think it's back. I think you can hear me. Let me check one sec on the audio. Okay, I think you can. Nice. That's so funny. We are haunted here. All right. So as I was saying, something that I've heard from people before is, gosh, why would you concluded that my microphone is convinced that they are competitors because it will not let me finish my sentence. Okay, it's good. All right, so take 3. I have heard people ask that. Why would I want HighByte if I have Ignition and vice versa? And the thing is, I honestly don't see them as competitors. I think they have their own separate, distinct strengths. So one main difference is Ignition as a platform, it gives you visualizations. Meanwhile, HighByte just does data ops. More importantly, it does like enterprise data ops. So I want to put this caveat there. There are no right or wrong answers. You only have options. So if you have Ignition and you just want to be an Ignition house, you can get exceptionally far doing that. Just keep in mind that to solve some use cases in Ignition for like enterprise unified namespace implementations, you're gonna have to buy a certain amount of third-party modules, which are not free, and you are gonna have to do a bit of scripting using their Jython coding language, which can be kind of limiting. For example, dealing with like the spark plug and the flat MQTT. Meanwhile, if you are willing to try out a data ops platform such as HighByte, those same use cases can be solved very low code, just drag and drop, and I think can be much more approachable for more people in your organization as opposed to needing like higher level Ignition power users. So this is just my personal opinion. This doesn't reflect Skellig, or in fact, I know people in Skellig probably disagree with me on this. But I also get asked the question sometimes like, hey, I'm interested in 4.0, like what's something that I should learn? And my de facto answer 100% of the time was, gosh, you guys have to check out Ignition. And I still stand by that. I completely do. But I'll throw this caveat in there. If your background is in IT, and maybe you're not as interested in building applications that interface with the UNS, like that's where I think Ignition, it really, really excels, especially because of the visualization component, especially because it can interact with human input and do just so much. A UDT is so powerful. It might be easier to just start with, okay, I'm just gonna try to connect to data, model it, and view it in a broker. Well, if that's your first starting step, that honestly might be easier to accomplish out of the box with HighByte. And I don't mind saying that again, because it's a 2-hour time trial. It costs you nothing. At this point, I think it's only good things if you can get experience using this type of platform. Okay, now, speaking of use cases, let's actually get into some. So the first one I wanted to show is, okay, we showed the Ignition module. That's incredible, that's cool. But let's pretend that you were just using regular good old Sparkplug. So this is a different connection I made, and this is just connecting to a MQTT broker subscribing to a Sparkplug topic. So you can see here it says localhost port 1883, and all I'm doing, I can show you on Ignition, is we are publishing out over Sparkplug B that bioreactor. So perfect, we have this open so you guys can hopefully see my Sparkplug B topic. It says virtual factory, and if we go to D data, you see batching, you see bioreactor, then you see Google protobufs, which again, great for control, terrible for human comprehension. If I'm building a UNS, I would be very sad if like my go-to source of data was this black triangle with a question mark in it. So what we're going to do right now in HighByte is turn this into plain, friendly MQTT data. That's going to be great. So the way that we do that is we first made our Spark-Plug-B connection. That's awesome. And the next thing we do is we're going to go to a pipeline. So our pipeline is called Spark-Plug-B to MQTT. Now, I totally forgot to mention this. Another thing that I really like about HighByte is I think they actually have very good documentation. So one thing that you guys should check out is if you can just Google the HighByte user guide. This is something public. User guide, HighByte. Here we go. So this is just like a public resource, totally free. And what's even better is if you're reading the documentation and you get a little confused, because I get a little confused sometimes, check out their YouTube channel. I really enjoy the videos that Aaron does. I think they're pretty great. And he does a lot of use cases that I think are really common and applicable. So he even does a use case showing the flat MQTT to Spark-Plug-B example. And in that video, he mentions that there are probably two things you want to do in the pipeline, so to do some manipulation to try and make that better. Because the thing is, if you just did a connection in HighByte from just Spark-Plug-B to MQTT, what it's going to do is it will get rid of the Google protobuf. That's great. But what'll happen is it'll just be one giant payload on one topic. And again, then you don't have that hierarchy. That's not very browsable. That's not very human friendly. I don't love it. So instead, what you need to do is you have to add two stages, a flattened stage and a breakup stage. Their documentation is pretty great at this. I really enjoy when people put examples in. That's so much better. But basically, what the flatten does is it gets you one key to one value instead of having like nested keys. And then what the breakup stage does is basically it breaks it up every key. So therefore, our MQTT payload is just going to be, every key will be one topic, basically. So we can come down here and we can look up breakup. Click that. Here's a beautiful picture, right? So if you had 3 keys, that'll actually just break it up into actually 3 distinct separate payloads. So that's pretty cool. Another neat thing about the pipelines that I learned is that if you click the edit button, the track activity button is actually hidden there. What's really neat is if you turn that on, that actually enables you to use a feature called replays. Now this might take a minute, but the replays are really handy. I mean, this is success, so it's not that useful, but let me tell you, when you're developing and something goes wrong, it's really nice to be able to look into the replay, see the log, see the error message. We'll click one just for fun. I don't think it's going to show us anything too interesting, but let's see. So we can click on like each block. We get some fun facts about it. I think we get to have some of the output. Yes, we do. Let me expand this out. So yeah, it shows us some of the statistics too. It tells us like how fast all this is working. It's a really handy dandy tool that I just wanted to shout out really quick. Okay, cool. So we have this pipeline, it's going, and now we're gonna look at the output in my broker. So I come on over to my broker and we can look and we can see that we have this bioreactor topic right here, and I can expand it out and wow, would you look at that? It's beautiful. I can see so many things now. Every single guy is just its own topic. Like, that's a really nifty, convenient feature to have just right out of the box. So that's great. All right. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is another fun new version 4 feature, which is called validation. So we're going to hop back on over to pipelines, and we're going to click on this. So what's really cool is they offer this new little box here called model validation, which means you can basically do a check that your data fits a certain schema before it can move on. Now, really quick, let me show you some background as to what this is, because you're probably wondering. We're going to go back. So what this model validation is I made this bioreactor simulator. So let's see. I have this little OPC server running on my computer, and it has simulated data from this FermentBot thing. Now, the fun thing about this FermentBot website is they actually give you simulation data, but it's not formatted particularly helpful. If we look at some of the tag names, it's stuff like CS, MU, MX, OTR. Like, if you're looking at the screen, you can kind of like piece together, oh yeah, I know what that means, but gosh, if you now lose the fermentbot screen, you're looking at MU and you're like, I have no idea what that means, right? So what we did was in HighByte, we created a little data model for this guy. And that was the one we were talking about earlier. We made the bioreactor simulator. Then we created some instance. So if we look at bio1, we can see that it is just linked to our bio1 values, and it has friendly names like total substrate, substrate concentration. That's amazing. And I made a second one for good measure. Same thing, just with the bio2 values. So what we decided to do in our pipeline was say, okay, we're going to do a test. We're going to read our modeled instance value with the friendly names, and we're going to see if it meets the model validation where I picked that bioreactor model. So obviously it should pass, right? I'm trying to see, okay, does an instance of my model meet the model? And then what happens is, if it succeeds, it's going to write it to the topic, model passed, and if it fails, it goes to the topic, okay, model failed. But then what we did was we made a second read where we said, okay, I'm going to read the raw OPC data, those messy ones, the ones where it says like MU and stuff. And we're going to run it through the model validation block. And if it passes, well, then it goes to our model pass topic. And if it failed, it goes to our model fail topic. So what we're hoping to see is one published to each. So we can open up our MQTT Explorer. Let me minimize this. And we can see in our past validation, we do have the value that we expected, which is our model with the friendly names. And we can see that in failed validation, we have the model, we have the raw values that aren't meeting our model. So that works. Now, this is super duper powerful because you can imagine, gosh, what if I have ignition, or what if I did a really good job of modeling data at the edge? Do I really want to remodel that data as a model in HighByte? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe instead what would make sense is to use model validation, to just do a pass that like, okay, listen, you don't need to have your models live in HighByte, but anybody can publish to our UNS so long as they fit their corresponding model that we established, right? So that would be really handy. I think that's a really powerful tool. I'm super stoked that they added it. Okay. Now, the next one that I want to talk about, the other fun feature, is the one called, oh look, Paul's here. Hello, Paul. It's back, gone again. Yeah, I am haunted, Paul. Oh, and hello. I'm so bad at pronouncing names. Jiao. Hello. I'm so glad you're here. Hello. Okay, great. Okay, yes. So the last thing that, the last use case I want to show is like my favorite one. It's so cool. This one is called the named query. This one is really powerful because finally we can easily query in real time our unified namespace. So the way we do that is we're going to hop on over to namespaces. And namespaces is, you just make them by clicking the little plus. You can add the hierarchy that you like. So I just made one called HighByte, bio instances, and then I put in bio1 and bio2. Now, the way that you add them is all you have to do, you can name these whatever you want. The way that you make it is you just have to click reference as to on, and then you select an instance. Now, at the moment, just as an FYI, namespaces is only working with like regular classic instances. I don't think they have released it to do templated instances, which is why today we're keeping it simple. So these are just regular instances, nothing fancy. Yep, we're gonna remove that. Just in case you try this on your own. So you make an instance, you can read the node and you're like, okay, cool, I see my stuff. Now you can imagine that if you're at your site and this is like a fully fledged flush out bioreactor, that there can be like a whole lot of data under there, right? It could be overwhelming. Well, this is where it gets really powerful. We can go into our pipelines now and we can do a namespace query. And in here, you just have a trigger. I just did pulled, keep it simple, right? But I can go to this block where now I can do value dot an attribute equals something or greater than, or is greater than, or less than, or something, right? And so what this is doing is it is now querying all of my bio instances, looking at that attribute and saying, okay, who equals 200? And then in this case, I'm having it just write to my topic, which is called namespace output. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And you can see, all right, if it did the math and it told me right away, bio2 is the one who met that condition of the growth rate is like equal to 100 or whatever it was, right? So this is a really powerful feature. I am so excited that they have this. I really hope that they expand it, because that's probably the most tricky thing right now. One of the most unsolved things right now about the UNS is like, gosh, how can I figure out where things are in real time? Because if you look at these fully built out UNSs, oh my gosh, there can be so many topics. It can be a bit overwhelming. So it could be so fun to be like, well, tell me, like, what are all my active alarms across every single site? You know, like, that could be wild to have that be returned to you. Like, oh, here's the list or something. So super stoked about that. All right, awesome. So that at the moment kind of wraps up all of the examples that I had for today that were prepared, I think. Yep, we talked about the ignition module, we talked about the pipelines, we talked about namespaces, we talked about validation. That's pretty much all the big features on version 4 that I wanted to hit. Oh wait, there was one thing I knew I was forgetting. Something that you guys should do is, if you want to get started with HighByte and you're really interested in the unified namespace, you should go to their this webpage, support.highbyte.com, click on knowledge base. And then if you come down to references, there's this line right here, reference solution, advanced techniques and applications for building a unified namespace. Click on that, and what that is going to bring you is this amazing example talking about UNS, talking about HighByte, and my favorite part is there's a project file here. Now it's a little hidden, but it's really great, because all you have to do is download that project file. If you actually click on it, it's pretty much just like a giant JSON. All you have to do, download that project file, come back over here to project, and import it, and then you're already going to have a bunch of examples and simulations ready to go. So thank you, Ryan. I think he was the one who built that. Cool. All right. So I think that officially concludes everything that I wanted to talk about really quick with HighByte. And I think because we have time, I guess I went through that faster than I thought. I think I talk fast when I get a little nervous. There's one more example I can show, but it's going to take me a minute to log in. I can show the demo I built that I didn't know what to do with. So let's see. No. I left my phone in the other room unless I can get to messages. Oh, it's close by. Wait, it's right here. That multi-factor authentication. So I said no development, but I didn't say there wouldn't be any logging in. I made no promises on that front. I guess while I'm logging in, I can tell you guys something else. So, the other thing that we're going to do, the next live stream is not going to be next week. It's actually going to be a few weeks from now in November. I'm super excited. What we're going to do for that one is talk about what do we do about historical data? Because I get that question a lot. Like, people seem to understand, okay, UNS, MQTT broker, real-time state of the business, that's great, but gosh, what am I supposed to do with all of my historical data everywhere? There doesn't seem to be a good answer to that. Well, my friend Jeff has a good answer. It's called the Unified Analytic Framework, and we're going to talk about that in a few weeks, so keep your eyes posted. I'm excited. That'll be a lot of fun. All right, Microsoft, I'm going to give you 1 minute. Otherwise, I'll just make it a clip if it won't authenticate me. It will not. Okay. All right, that's fine. We will make it a quick clip, but yeah, look forward to that. Awesome. So I guess that's all I have for tonight. Sorry it wasn't an hour. It's hard to talk for an hour. But I hope you guys liked the new format. I think I did, actually, because it's actually really fun also to make all the clips and stuff. So again, keep an eye out. We'll be posting a lot more for all the development that went into this demo. And yeah, I think that wraps it up. So thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it. I hope you have a happy Halloween, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.